I know nowadays there's a lot of discourse about how we shouldn't do worst movies of the year lists. I completely disagree with that. I think it's stupid. You gotta take the good with the bad. I think that we should talk about these worst movies of the year. They're never gonna learn unless we tell them, we didn't like this, we don't want more of this, so we should do it. And even then, I think there is sometimes positive criticism, constructive criticism that could come with it. And then there's also just downright movies that should be kicked to the ground, kicked while they're down. Soulless slop that I think deserves to be called out for treating the audience like they're stupid and trying to take our money. So let's get into my worst movies of 2024. At the bottom of the list, I don't really have 10. 10 didn't stick out to me as, yeah, definitely put worst of the year. There were some movies that kind of disappointed me. I was a little bit disappointed by Maxine, despite still thinking that it was a good movie. So I didn't feel right about putting it on my worst of the year. Stuff like that. There were a few, 5, 6 out of 10s that kind of just escaped the radar. But first, Red One. A lot of people like dogpiling on this movie. It shouldn't have cost this much for what it was. There's just no reason this movie should have cost as much. And listen, I'm no stranger or snob when it comes to slop, action, quip slop, stuff like that. This movie seemed like it was going to just be a Rock and Chris Evans action movie set around Christmas, have some mythos, just be an enjoyable time, and it just didn't work for me. I didn't think it was terrible. It's definitely not nearly as bad as some people make it out to be. It's not the bane of the universe, but it's just not very good. I don't find it very entertaining. I thought maybe the stars of the movie could at least give me something, and I feel like I was in the perfect state of mind to watch this movie. I was at home. It was Christmas time. I was with family. The whiskeys were going, but nah, did not save the movie one bit for me, unfortunately. So yep, Red One. Next up, The Strangers Chapter 1. And, when I reflect on this movie, I didn't give it a good review, obviously, when it first came out. It is pretty bad. It's very derivative, and the characters are infuriatingly stupid. This is nothing that you haven't heard before. This movie just really doesn't have a point in existing besides just kind of wanting to set this up for whatever they wanted to do next. Seems like they made this movie pretty much a complete remake of that first one, but just tweaked a few things and planted a few seeds because they wanted to make a trilogy. So basically, feels like we're kind of just backsliding, doing a ton of things that we've seen before. This almost feels like the Cabin Fever remake to the original, but of this, because they did film 2 additional ones with this town or whatever they choose to do next, they wanted to use this as a setup for those, basically. And what that renders this as is basically pointless. Just a retread. All of the new material is basically going to be in Strangers Chapter 2 and 3, so I hope those are better. I'll check them out. But as for this one, it's kind of worthless. It really doesn't matter. Pretty much just disposable and useless. Up next, Madam Webb. This movie, I was hoping it would be good. Honestly, I like Sony. I like the Sony movies. I like the Spider-Man movies, Into the Spider-Verse. I like the Venom movies quite a bit. Madam Webb was just shockingly bad. I really was, even after I heard all of the buzz, all the hype, I was like, come on, there's no way it's that bad. Everybody's being dramatic. It seemed like people just wanted to dogpile on Sony for making another Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movie. And I kind of see that. I get how it is a cash grab. But at the same time, I thought there's a bit of a unique premise. I really like the stars of it. And unfortunately, it really is just as bad as everybody said it was, made it out to be. I'm bummed to hear that. I was trashed watching this movie and it didn't even really make it very watchable. There's some dumb fun to be had with how bad it is at certain points. You could tell, heavily re-edited. I don't know what it is. They just have some very cartoonishly goofy choices in this movie. Things that you would not expect to be featured in a 2024 superhero movie. It feels like this. I feel like even remembering in 2015, thinking with the Fantastic Four remake, which I actually don't think is that bad, seeing some decisions and being like, how did this end up in a 2015 superhero movie? The thing with superhero movies like this, it's just, we've come so far. We've seen what these movies can be, what they can do. This feels like such a downgrade. It feels like we're just back to the early 2000s when movies like this would regularly get made, and these were pretty much the standard for what we would expect out of a superhero movie. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect, after the Dark Knight trilogy, the Infinity Saga, the Logan, all these movies, that they would still make a movie this incompetent, this bad, and this out of touch with what superhero fans want. Most studios at least know, even when they make generic slop, to just give the fans some comic booky shit, some action, colorful costumes as the bare minimum. That's the thing, is generic has generally been the bare minimum, and you could usually expect at least that from your worst average Marvel movie, which is not good, very much not good. But still, you never expect anything this bad to come out of a superhero movie in this day and age. So Madam Webb, well-deserved spot on this list. I haven't even seen Craven yet, to be honest, but I'm sure that from what I'm hearing, it's right up there with it. Next up, getting down to the bottom three that I have listed, Night Swim. This movie is entertaining, but it's a total piece of shit. It's a terrible movie. It was marketed and hyped to an insane degree just to be so dumb and so bad and so goofy. It's just so Blumhouse, you know? You got some redeeming factors, and why I'm saying these redeeming factors is because I want to show why I'm separating it from the bottom two on the list, or top two, I guess, depending on how you look at it. Wyatt Russell he's watchable. He's a good actor. You have talent like that on screen. You know, like, that's the thing. This movie is, you can watch it. That's the most I could say. I wasn't bored, I guess, during it. But it's not good at all. It's another Blumhouse January piece of shit. So, yeah, once again, right there, bottom. As for number two, I really did debate whether this should be... It was number one for a very long time until I watched this top movie. So basically, the number two on this list was the worst movie of the year for me, easily by a country mile, until the last one came out. And that one is Imaginary, the other Blumhouse piece of shit from this year. I think this movie is so offensively boring. I fucking hated it. I think this movie is just god-awful. I give Jeff Wadlow like a lot of slack too. I don't think that Fantasy Island or whatever that movie's called, or Truth or Dare, are as bad as people say, but this movie bored me, pissed me off, offended me to my core. I was not happy at all. And just to give you like the context too of when I watched this and probably what influenced me being in a bit of a bad mood, it was like during my job's like busy season. So, you know, you spend most of your time working. You don't get much free time at all. I caught it at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, like pretty much went straight from work to the movie, and thought, hey, I could unwind, watch a movie, enjoy it, just relax, and it was just terrible. So I was in such a bad mood that I spent some of my only free time, instead of like being with friends, watching a good movie, I decided to watch this piece of shit instead of doing literally anything else. Just so fucking bad. Such a terrible movie. Even telling this story just gets me pissed off again. So absolutely, this movie is a piece of shit. Deserves number two. But I will say I think that number one is just conceptually, morally, in every way, number one pissed me off. Probably have never heard of it, but Lola. Now this movie is just heinous. It's an A24 kind of weird, like, trauma dumping movie, I guess, from a very out-of-touch filmmaker. It's poorly acted, poorly constructed, pretty much just, it treats everything so seriously in this family drama, but it treats issues in basically the worst possible way, very flippantly tosses around these issues, and it's just offensively bad. It treats everything terribly. It handles every bad issue as much as it possibly could in the worst possible way. Like I said, director is just so out of touch, and it's a very morally confused movie, but at the same time, it's so stereotypical. Basically, you could predict from beginning to end, like, oh, what other bad thing could possibly happen to this main character that would make their life worse? Oh, this happened. Okay, of course. Oh, what? Is her brother gonna get hit by a car too? Oh, yeah, of course that happens. Like, anything bad that you could possibly think of that could happen to a character, it just exploits it in such a gross way. None of the characters are likable. They're all insufferable. You are just bathing in the scummiest of humanity in the most out-of-touch movie possible. Just frames things in such a weird way. It chooses to focus and fixate on certain aspects of the story in the most incompetent way. It handles pretty much everything bad on every level. I think it's a terrible movie. But those are my top worst movies of the year list. Just wanted to throw this little list together for you guys. Let me know what you guys think are the worst movies of the year. I'd love to hear. I'm GM Light. Have a good one.